We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday when you're listening to this. We're recording Wednesday night. My guest today is Eric, and this is a good time to have Eric in because there's so much shit going on. Eric has a talent for breaking things down to the specifics so we truly understand it as opposed to just getting caught up in the bullshit that we hear every day. And Eric, I was thinking about this for as long as I've been talking to you or as long as I've been doing the podcast and TikToks and stuff, we've really gone through a progression prior to the election, serious political things, pushing back against some of the political ideals that the Republicans have. And then after the election, it gets it's still compelling and serious, but now it's becoming scary. And then it becomes really scary. And now it just becomes scary and fucking silly to a certain extent. I mean, some of the
Oh yeah.
stuff is so blatant and so ridiculous. It's scary and it's horrible, but it's silly, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, it's completely absurd. Some of what they're trying to do is so blatantly unconstitutional, un-American, and Donald Trump's base is trying to walk circles around it, trying to figure out how to justify it and cheer for what they want because they don't get it.
Yeah.
And if it was a Democrat doing the exact same thing, they'd be mortified, they'd be up in arms. It's the fact that it's their guy, this charismatic person. And while we don't see the appeal of Donald Trump, he has a certain level of charisma for the poorly educated, for anybody who isn't smart. Because as he says, smart people don't like him. And if a Democrat was doing half of what this administration was trying to do, they would want to, throw him out and replace him with anybody. But because it's their guy, they don't, they want to justify it. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that they understand they're on the decline. At least they were worried they were on the decline. After we elected President Obama, the conservative movement kind of was fizzling in this country, and they were worried that they weren't going to be relevant again. So they shifted even farther right, trying to counter the shift to the left from Obama.
Yeah. You mentioned Donald Trump has charisma, and you qualified that by saying by those people that are caught up in the cult or Trumplafucks. And I guess the best way to break that down and explain it to people as to what you mean, he is charismatic to the same people that find tractor pulls high entertainment. Same kind of fucking crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not talking
Um,
about the brightest and the best.
no, but I've talked about it before. Part of the reason he's got this pull with them. Look at what just happened with that meeting with RFK Jr., where they were talking about autism. He tried 4 times to say acetaminophen, and he couldn't do it.
He
And
could.
he struggled and struggled. He speaks at probably a fifth or sixth grade level, and that might be being very generous. And
I
that's
think it
part of what
is.
they find appealing. He's not well spoken. He doesn't come across as highly educated like a lot of other politicians who use 5, 6 syllable words, the big fancy words when they could use plain English.
Yeah.
And they think he's some kind of a genius because he talks like them.
Right.
That's part of his appeal.
Yeah. If you talk to people who watch you or watch me or watch both of us, they might tell you that they think we know what we're talking about, have some good insights as to what's going on, and and I think that's probably true because we have above average intelligence and we're interested in it, so we pay attention to it. But as we've talked about before, um, we're not completely faultless in this thing because um, we watch what's going on now and we watch how ridiculous and how silly some of this stuff is. And we see Republicans still standing by Donald Trump. When this election happened, Donald Trump won. I think you and I both believed that he would only go so far because the Republicans would say, well, that's fucking too far. We're going to push back. I believe that. I gave the Republicans more credit. I think you did too. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think that we'd be this far down the road with this much shit going on and still the Republicans being complicit?
Uh, Time wise, them being complicit by this date, yes.
Well, that's a good point. Okay.
With as much as he's tried to do in this short period of time, no. Um, I figured they wouldn't start pushing back until they started getting bad polling numbers for themselves going into the midterms. We're not quite into the heart of primary season for the midterm elections yet. Um, so it hasn't hit yet. That'll probably kick off about January when we really get deep into we got people announcing and there's campaign ads going, sure, but they're not deep in primaries yet. So as those primaries get going, you might see some of them break away from Donald Trump at that point. But they're gonna ride Donald Trump out until um, they think that they're not gonna win with him anymore. They are worried about losing the midterms and having Democrats in power. And if they think Donald Trump is their best bet to stay in power, they're gonna stick with him. If they think he's horrible, they're gonna dump him.
Think about what you just said and how crazy that is. I agree with you that that's true, but think of how crazy that is. The economy's going to shit. The publicity is fucking horrible. We got deportations. We got Jimmy Kimmel. We've got all this shit going on. This crazy, horrible shit. And they still haven't come to the point where they think, well, he might be good for us. Please, motherfucker, open your eyes and take a look at what's going on because he's already lost it for you. There's no going back.
Well, I think that's part of it. They haven't come to that realization, but they're also doing the math because we know that voters in this country have a very limited attention span, a very limited memory. It happens. You can't, I really thought with knowing how bad things ended under Donald Trump, there was no way he'd win again. But people forgot about how bad things were during COVID under Donald Trump. And they
It's true.
remembered the first couple of years where things were going pretty good because he left everything alone and he was riding on Barack Obama's economy.
Right.
So they're playing with this idea going, okay, if we break away from him too early, we're still going to get the blame for Donald Trump and the economy going to shit. And they're not going to remember that we stood up to him. So they're trying to find that sweet spot, is what I think is going on. They want to do it quick enough to the election that people remember they did it, but they also want to see if it's even going to have an effect on people's perception of them because they may be screwed either which way. And they're worried about the blowback from Donald Trump. I'm going to primary you and this and that. It's easier to stand up to him after primary season when they can't get primaried anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. When it comes down to it, it is abject cowardice, is what it
Yeah.
is. It's
Oh, yeah.
absolute cowardice that they won't stand up to Donald Trump. We're seeing some more people push back. You even had Ted Cruz push back regarding this Jimmy Kimmel thing. Um, and I think the only reason Ted Cruz pushed back and why some of these other people push back, they realize something you and I have been saying for a long time. You can go ahead and do this for Republicans, but remember, when the Democrats get power, they can do it too. What happens when
Mm-hmm.
the Democrats get power and they say, this fucking Fox News has been sued and lost for $1 billion and they're doing this and that. We should just cancel their, you can't cancel their license because networks don't have a broadcast license because they're not broadcasters. They broadcast through the TV channels. But play that same game. That's certainly possible. Either they think um, Democrats are above that, or they have no foresight at all.
Exactly. I think part of it is they believe Democrats won't stoop to that level. Democrats won't play that game because historically they haven't. It is the same thing Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. And they kept trying to take the moral high ground. And that's not working,
No.
evidently. I mean, look at what has happened. Uh, Donald Trump somehow falls ass backwards into the presidency twice. Um, the first time, I don't think anybody expected him to gain steam. He was a joke candidate. But because the Republicans weren't coalesced around a single candidate, he gained just enough traction to where he was forcing everybody else out of the race. And nobody would have said going into that primary he would have been the guy. He fell ass backwards into it. I don't even think he expected to win until it happened. Um, I think it was all a money grab. And then the second time around, all the metrics said he shouldn't have won, and yet somehow he did, because Democrats did what Democrats do, and they grasped defeat from the jaws of victory. They
Right.
should have won that, and they should have spanked him out into oblivion. But somehow Donald Trump falls ass backwards into being here. It's ridiculous.
And you always have to ask, why did they coalesce around Donald Trump and ride that train for all it's worth? Why did they do that? And I think it's best explained by what you said previously. After Obama, it looked like the conservative movement was dying on the vine. And then when Donald Trump comes along, regardless of how stupid and egregious he is, they saw he had some traction, so they jumped on board and rode it all for all it was worth, because that's all they had. They had nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, everybody said going into 2016, their best candidate, everybody assumed it was going to be Jeb Bush. Run another Bush. He was going to win. He was going to be at least win the Republican nomination. Whether he won the presidency against Clinton, that's to be debated. But it was going to be more of the same, more of George W.'s policies, more of H.W.'s policies, more of Reaganomics, more of that. And everybody was looking at conservatism going, what the fuck? What is this shit? But
Yeah.
then Donald Trump comes along with his brand of conservatism, and the fact that he brought a following with him from The Apprentice. He had a big chunk of fame that was already there that he capitalized into his political run. And it wasn't about whether or not he was a conservative at that point. They were able to use him to make conservatism look cool again because he had this following, this fan base. But he's an idiot, and they knew it. He was just a useful idiot, like we say a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about the big news of the day. There's always big news of every day. Of course, we had this shooting down in Dallas, Texas. Uh, Another mass shooting. Why not? It was fucking Wednesday. They seem to happen every day, but this one happened in Dallas, Texas, and this happened at an ICE detention unit. And so, um, I've heard conflicting numbers as far as who died and who's in uh, um, in the hospital. I've heard two people died, one person in the hospital. I've heard one person died, two people in the hospital. Nonetheless, some people died in this situation. And what happened, as I understand it, this shooter was in another building and shot into the building. He only hit detainees. Detainees were the only ones hit, which makes sense because there's more detainees than there are officers. The odds would go with hitting a detainee as opposed to an officer. But he takes the shot and then he kills himself. Immediately after this comes out, it's very much like the Charlie Kirk thing. Republicans, Donald Trump are screaming, "Oh, the libtards did it! The libtards did it!" And they find this guy, and next to him, they said, "Well, he's got some shells next to him, and the one's engraved anti-ice." So that was their support, and that came from Kash Patel. Of course, Kash Patel is the one that sold us twice that they had the killer from the Charlie Kirk thing and was wrong both times. He was also the one that tried to tell us that he was a libtard as well. So I don't trust Charlie Kirk. But the weird thing is, did you see the picture of the shells with this engraving on it?
No, I
It
haven't.
wasn't It wasn't engraved on it. It was written with like a Sharpie, anti-ice. Now, if I'm a crazy shooter and I'm going to write something on a bullet, which I haven't heard of anybody do since the fucking 50s or World War II when they put it on the bombs. Nobody's done that in recent memory. Now we've got two in a row. Imagine that. But it said anti-ice. Now, if it's a crazy fucker, you might say, if you actually did this, it would be fuck ice. Ice sucks. It wouldn't be anti-ice. That sounds like something you put on the road in Minnesota when it's snowing.
Right. Like that almost sounds, and I hate to be a conspiracy theorist about this because I don't know a lot about this whole situation, but it almost also sounds like something they put after the fact.
Yeah.
That they just said, "Oh yeah, if we put this down, oh, it's going to make it sound like it was those damn Democrats, it was those damn liberals." But if he was a liberal, and we don't know, I don't know much about this situation, but it sounds like we don't know much about the guy yet. Um, if they really were a liberal and on it, why were they going after the detainees? Most of the people on the left, the liberals, are supporting the detainees and they're against ICE and the immigration officers. Wouldn't they be going specifically against the officers? And wouldn't they have gotten at least one? You know, it doesn't make sense. It's like everything else surrounding this administration. There's enough there to question it. It makes you go, huh, this is just strange.
Well, and we know that NBC talked to this kid's brother. He's a 29-year-old guy, talked to his brother, and his brother said, I've never heard him talk shit about ICE. He's not even really that political. I don't know what that's about. But it's surprising that the director of the FBI, moments after this shooting happens, claims it's a liberal. And then they finally find the bullets, which were next to the guy who was shot, and it has written on it anti-ice. That writing anti-ice on that bullet sounds the same as the way the emails between the shooter of Charlie Kirk and his lover sound. They make no sense. They sound like they were written by ChatGPT or some 60-year-old guy. Doesn't fit the mold of a 22-year-old person. It just has, and I know if it was 20 years ago, we'd say this is a crazy conspiracy theory, but it all has the air of setup to try to twist a narrative. And then when you consider that Cash Patel is involved, doesn't really sound so fucking crazy.
Exactly. I mean, and this is coming from the administration where the president in this administration has said before, oh, maybe if I get a war going or we get something going, I could get another term. Well, it has he wants to try to use any of this to as a reason to go after people on the left to justify his vicious reactions and some of the bullshit he's doing. The fact that it could potentially be something, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It sounds crazy. And if we were talking about any other president, I'd probably say you're crazy for coming up with it. There's no
Yeah.
way the government would have been involved. But there's just too many coincidences, too many things don't add up. It makes you just scratch your head and go, it's possible. And
Well,
this is,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how we even get to this point in this country where so much weird stuff could even be considered possible.
Well, let's look at something I find I was talking about after the Charlie Kirk thing, and I'll reiterate it now after this incident. Donald Trump has an assassination attempt. Some kid sitting on a building from a distance away shot at Donald Trump. That's crazy. Charlie Kirk gets killed. He's shot at from a kid from a building at a far distance. That's weird. This shooting at an ICE detention center was shot from a kid from a building away from the situation. It's not like a lot of these crazy people that just crop up with a gun and start shooting people like in schools and shit. This is all seems to be very planned, but it always fails to a certain extent. Give you another thing, Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is shot in the neck. They're telling us it's a 30-06. Well, if you know anything about guns, it's interesting because they say the bullet didn't go through his body, it stayed in his body. If that was a 30-06 bullet, that would have gone clean through his body and something else. So my question is, all the things that went on when Donald Trump's assassination attempt, we know nothing about that. We know nothing. They have told us nothing about that. Same with Charlie Kirk. What they have told us seems to be wrong. He's a liberal. It's this gun or it's that gun. And you have two or three distractions set up before or after the shooting. It just, this all seems like setups to garner something in the narrative. And it sounds crazy that Trump may do something like the assassination attempt or the Charlie Kirk thing or this thing with the attention center, that he might do that um, to change the narrative because people have died in those things. Until you remember, um, a million people died of COVID and he didn't fucking blink an eye. So I wouldn't put it past him if that's the game he's playing here.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would hope though, if they really are doing all of this, that the truth would come to light at some point, and the people responsible do face some level of accountability, because they should. If this was all set up and he is sacrificing people left and right to make this happen, there's got to be people in the know that are dealing with it, that are complicit, and there's going to be fallout from it. Eventually, Democrats are going to be back in control, and they're going to get to the bottom of some of this. At least we hope, in part by having a president with a better freaking attorney general than Merrick Garland
Yeah.
or Pam Bondi. But then again, um, anybody is better than Pam Bondi, including Merrick Garland. Uh, it's just that they would have somebody there, but Congress will be holding hearings looking at some of this, I would assume. There's gonna be investigations, and if this stuff is proven to be faked in any way or a setup or intentionally done by this administration, there's going to be people held accountable. Maybe not Donald Trump himself, but the lower level folks will be held accountable, and they better be thinking about that because Donald Trump won't save them.
Yeah. All this stuff is bound to come out. I'm a firm believer that when Donald Trump dies or is rushed out of office or is incapacitated somehow, we are going to see amazing amounts of information on Donald Trump coming out because of who he was. And now that he wields no power, that people are going to want to clear the slate a little bit. And what we know of Donald Trump is just probably a small percentage of what he's guilty of. And I'm convinced at some point down the road, when he's gone and out of power, that he's not only going to be uh, thought of negatively in history, he's going to be a pariah because people are going to really understand how they were played, not just Democrats, but Republicans as well.
Oh yeah, there's going to be studies done similar to what they did after World War II, trying to figure out how the Germans fell for everything that happened with with Hitler, things like that. They're going to be looking at this, and it might not happen right away, but in 10 years, when they're teaching this era of political history in like school, the narrative that is going to be told, Donald Trump is going to be painted in such a negative light that he is going to go down as the worst president in history. He's going to be remembered as worse than Nixon by
Oh,
far. I would take Nixon at this point. Let him wiretap the Democrats. That's minor in comparison to what was going on with Donald Trump. I mean, the fact that even historians are putting him below William Henry Harrison, who famously only served for 31 days after catching pneumonia and dying he caught pneumonia on inauguration day and died a month later. He is
yeah.
considered a better president than Trump. The bar is low for how bad Donald Trump is.
Well, things are already starting to leak out a little bit. I'll give you an example. We all know who Tom Horman is, or Homan, whatever the fuck it is. He is the border czar. He's a big Fred Flintstone dumbass motherfucker. I do not like this guy because he thinks he's tough, he thinks he's smart, and he's neither. He seems above it all, above reproach. And then we hear this story that prior to the election, he was selling influence, assuming Donald Trump became president. He got caught in an FBI sting, taking a bribe, and it's on video him accepting a bag with $50,000 in it. I mean, that's about as blatant as you can possibly be. And Very, very unprofessional too. I don't think people are handed bags of money in Washington D.C. anymore. There's bribery, but they don't do it like in the old '30s gangster movies anymore. They do it a little slicker than that. But apparently not Tom Homan. But it's right there on video, and somebody interviewed him. I did nothing illegal. Look, if you're a government official and you're getting a bag full of $50,000, you did something wrong. There's definitely something wrong just by accepting that money. You did something wrong. So this is going to kind of there's going to be investigations. Information is going to come out after the 2026 midterms, assuming the Democrats take control. This thing is going to explode even further. But these little things are going to keep popping up everywhere. These leaks are going to keep coming up everywhere, and it's going to be hard for Republicans to control.
Oh yeah, it's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse the farther Donald Trump declines, um, because it's clear his physical health is declining, his mental health is declining rapidly, and the farther he declines, the less power he has to wield, because
Right.
they start to see he's not with it, and as he weakens, they're going to say, well, he's not going to be able to put that pressure on me anymore. I can come out and I can leak this to the press. I can say this. And then you have all of these Republican members of Congress and senators that aren't running for reelection that
Right.
have said, I'm not running because I don't want to get my ass kicked. So, you know, what do they have to lose by standing up to Donald Trump? Nothing. What do they have by leak to leak? What do they have to lose to leak stuff to the media? Nothing. It could be the beginning of them rehabilitating their political career, looking ahead 4, 6, 8 years down the road, and saying, "I got to do something if I want to stay back in politics. Otherwise, I'm never going to be doing this job ever again."
Well, I think a lot of them are going to be precluded from this business altogether because they're going to be carrying the stink of Donald Trump on them for the rest of their careers. And Donald Trump is going to be perceived as so bad that anybody that stood near him, that's why, for the life of me, I don't understand why people haven't walked away by now, other than they're afraid of him. But he's become such a joke, and a perfect example of that is the Jimmy Kimmel thing. I thought this whole thing was very well, it was very hopeful, I think, though, he doesn't like Jimmy Kimmel, so he gets him fired. He thinks he's a hotshot. ABC Disney wants their merger, wants some merger going on, and they fire Jimmy Kimmel. Unfortunately, there's somebody who's more powerful than Donald Trump. There's somebody that's more powerful than Disney and ABC, and that is the people of this country. And this is what we've been waiting for, the people of this country to stand up and push back. And they went fucking nuts on Disney. They're worried about a $6 billion merger. Well, in 72 hours, they lost $3.5 billion. That escalated quickly.
Oh yeah, I heard it was even higher. I heard it was up and getting
Could
close to 5 billion that they lost.
could be.
Um, that people who said I'm unsubscribing and not going back. Now we'll see if those customers do go back. But I think this whole thing has scared Disney um, to the point that ABC put Kimmel back on the air. But Disney didn't learn their lesson either. Why? Because they want to make up the money that's lost from all these people who said, well, suddenly they're not gonna subscribe. So what do? They up their subscription rates.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to be paying even more money. Well, I was one of the ones that canceled my Disney Plus subscription in part because of Jimmy Kimmel and how weak they were with Donald Trump, but there were other reasons on top of it. And I don't know. I'm waiting till I have a laundry list of shows that I want to watch before I consider going back. And them raising their rates is making that decision a lot harder because I only have so many funds, I'm like most people. I don't have an unlimited bank account. And it's getting to the point where if you subscribe to too many subscription services, you're in the same boat as getting cable again. The whole point
Yeah.
of going to streaming was it was supposed to be cheap. It was cheaper than cable. And here you are. Uh, I think the last time I had my last bill with Disney, granted I was paying for the no ads feature, it was almost $30.
Yeah.
Why? What's the point? And
Well,
now they want
and
to go up again.
that's why I got so high with Disney and ABC and ESPN and all this stuff. It's $30. Doesn't sound like much money, but that's every month. That's not a one-time charge. That's every month. So when you say you canceled your account for $30 a month, that means they lost $360 from you and from millions of other people. That's a problem. And that's why they capitulated here. Now, Donald Trump, of course, was embarrassed when Jimmy Kimmel came back. What really was happening was these two big conglomerates that own a bunch of TV stations, Sinclair and Nexstar, I think is the name of it. They
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of television stations, and they're the ones that push Disney to do this because they have some clout with Disney and ABC and such. Um, so ABC bends to the people, but Sinclair and Nexstar say, no, we're not airing it. Jimmy Kimmel made a great point. He said, Donald Trump can't take a joke, so he canceled me out of here and said nobody watched me. So because he canceled me and now that I'm back, he's got untold more millions of people watching me. That's got to upset him bigly. And he's right. He took a guy who was probably lowest in the ratings for nighttime talk shows, made him the most popular guy. Again, another Trump fuck up.
Oh yeah, and the whole thing it comes down to Donald Trump can't take a joke. He doesn't have a sense of humor. Have you ever heard him laugh at anything
No,
that wasn't
no.
cruel?
Well, that's true.
No.
That's true.
Yeah. And if it's a criticism of him, this is what malignant narcissists do. Even if it's a joke, he doesn't take it as a joke. It's an insult. He wants revenge. He's got to hit back, and he goes after Jimmy Kimmel. He could have ignored the whole situation. Nobody would have thought twice about it, and it would have blown over. And you know, it was a funny moment. It was over and done within a matter of a night. By the next night, Kimmel would have made another joke about something else, and it would have been forgotten.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
now it got blown way out of proportion, and Donald Trump thinks he can pressure him, and he can get away with it because he's Donald Trump and he's the president. It
The thing about
he's Go
the
ahead.
thing about Donald Trump is that when he gets his ass kicked and he loses, he can't just take the L. He can't. He's got to double down or triple down, and he did that. Now that Jimmy Kimmel's back on the air, now he's talking about suing ABC for what? I don't know. I mean, but then he throws in, well, I sued ABC before and they paid me $16 million, not because you had a case, but because you pressured him and they capitulated. Now they can't afford to capitulate, so go ahead and sue them for God knows what, mortgage fraud. What the fuck are you gonna do?
Well, the best thing he could potentially hope for is some kind of defamation of character or slander or something. The problem is the defense to both of those things in a civil case is the truth. And the fact of the matter is, they were talking. Kimmel was talking about Charlie Kirk passing, and was talking about what Donald Trump actually said about how he was handling the grief process. Then played the clip of Donald Trump saying, "Oh yeah, I'm handling it pretty well. Oh look, we're building the ballroom over here," and he just goes, "Well, he's moved on to the fourth stage of grief, construction." There's no defamation there. He didn't
No,
take anything out of context. He didn't make something up. He used Donald Trump's own words. They have a slam dunk defense if that's what they go for. And because of freedom of speech and freedom of the press, well, Donald Trump doesn't have much of a case. He's just hoping that if he brings up some kind of a huge lawsuit, they're going to capitulate again. Look what happened with Wall Street Journal, or no, New York
ABC.
Times.
ABC paid him $16 million they didn't have to do.
Well, I was talking about, I was in at the Times, New York Times, where he
Yeah.
tried suing him for 15 billion. Judge took one look at the case and said, yeah, this is bullshit. It's out of here.
Right.
You know,
Well, that's
try
you know th
again.
that's what he's doing. He's trying to bully people into capitulating or bending a knee, and it's always worked for him in business when he was in charge. But it's happening less and less, especially now. People see him losing in these situations. I mean, what he's doing is maybe the most, I won't say it's the most egregious thing, but certainly egregious what he's doing. He's weaponizing his power as president of the United States. And a
Mhm.
perfect illustration is trying to pressure Disney to capitulate by hanging a merger approval over their heads. That's clearly what he did. The FCC director, not quite as smooth as Donald Trump, said flat out, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." And now he's getting his ass kicked now because he should have never said that. That basically illustrated exactly what we're saying. It was trying to strong arm independent company using the U.S. government's power. And this guy, this Carr guy, he's got some problems. Either now or when the Democrats get in the House and the Senate, he's going to be up there answering a lot of fucking questions, and he's going to have some problems.
Well, was it Eric Swalwell, I think, that
Yeah.
said, he better get himself a good lawyer because he's going to be in front of Congress when we get power back, and he's going to have to answer for those comments and for what happened with Jimmy Kimmel, and they're going to look into it. And as we've said before, the underlings don't have the same immunity that Donald Trump has.
No.
And Donald Trump is not going to be pardoning these people on the way out the door. The only thing they could hope for, and this is something that just popped in my head, but would be like if Donald Trump kicks the bucket and before they announce it to the public, everybody who was under him gets a written pardon signed by auto pen because, that'd be the only way Donald Trump would pardon all these people. It'd have to happen probably after he's gone with an auto pen before they've told the American people, because he won't do it. There's nothing in it for him. He doesn't see the gain, and that's all Donald Trump thinks of is what do I gain? How does it affect me? Everything is about Donald Trump first, always.
Well, and the thing about his immunity, I think people believe that he has sweeping immunity over doing anything he wants during his presidency. And that's not true. As I understand it, bribery is not part of that immunity deal. And clearly, he's taken his share of money. There may be any number of ways you could get him on that sort of thing. So before he worries about pardoning anybody, he may want to look for a pardon for himself with J.D. Vance or whatever. But the other thing that comes into play is that you may be hoping that Donald Trump will will pardon you, but if he dies on stage, keels over, choking on a Big Mac, there ain't going to be time for him to pardon anybody. You're now fucked. They're going to want to hold people accountable. And since Donald Trump isn't here, guess whose door they're going to knock on?
Exactly. If it happens to be some big public way, like we've talked about, where it very well could be, um, then yeah, they're not going to be able to do something behind closed doors and give themselves all pardons. And it's horrible that we have to sit there and think that they might even attempt this. We're
Yeah.
talking about trying to lie to the American people about the potential passing of an American president just to make sure that they get pardons for their own misdeeds. But it's possible. And with this administration, nothing's out of the realm of possibility, it seems, except for them doing the goddamn right thing. But uh, Donald Trump won't step down. He won't try to seek any kind of a pardon deal with JD Vance, like, hey, I'll step down, I'll endorse you, you give me a pardon. He's not Nixon. Nixon had the thought ahead of, oh shit, this is going to be bad for me. This is going to ruin my legacy. This is my only chance at maybe redeeming myself. I'll step down. Ford can pardon me, and the country can move on, and maybe they'll even just forget I exist. And that kind of
Right.
happened. Donald Trump
Kind of.
doesn't think like that. He
No.
doesn't think 3 steps ahead. He didn't even before he had all of the mental decline and the mental issues that are obviously going on now. He thinks in the moment, he thinks about benefiting himself. And unless somebody can explain it to him in a way he can grasp, that letting JD Vance take over and give him a pardon would be good for Donald Trump, he'll never do it.
No, the only way he does something like that is if he believes he's absolutely cornered and there's no way out. He will take the gutless pussy ass bitch way out. That's the only way that happens. And I don't know how that could even be set up. But Donald Trump always talks about how the DOJ was weaponized against him and the Republicans. What Donald Trump is doing now is absolutely weaponization. And I'll give you an example. Remember that True Social he put out recently that probably should have been a DM? Hey, Pam, you're doing a lot of talk, but you're not doing anything. What about prosecuting people like James Comey and so forth down the line? And then we hear now today that there may be an indictment with James Comey. Here's something you need to understand about James Comey. I heard somebody talk about it today. What he is hoping to get on James Comey is perjury from way back when he was in court or in front of Congress, actually. It's ironic that they would want to get him on perjury in front of Congress when we have six or at least four Supreme Court justices that all lied in front of Congress. But he wants to get Comey on this. But here's the deal. And I didn't know this until I heard somebody talk about it on television. There is a statute of limitations. So even if he committed perjury, even if he committed perjury, you know when that statute of limitation is up?
What?
5 days. 5 days. That's the end of the statute of limitation. If he goes past those 5 days, it's past the statute. You got 5 days. That's why the rush. And that's why we'll probably see an indictment sometime soon. But then if you want to get him on perjury, you're going to have to prove that he lied. And since Donald Trump does most of the lying, that may be hard to do. They'll have to prove that he meant to lie. Maybe he just didn't know. And then they'll have to prove that it did something adverse to Donald Trump or whatever, which it didn't because Donald Trump is the fucking president. He has no chance of winning that fucking case, but he's doing it strictly out of spite to show how tough he is, to weaponize the DOJ, and to seek revenge.
Right. And people in his administration should be taking notice. James Comey was a Donald Trump appointee. This is how he deals with people who are of no use to him anymore. He throws you to the side. He's not useful. Well, he did something that didn't work out the way I wanted to, even though he probably followed my directions to a T. But he must have screwed it up because it didn't work out the way I planned it. So fuck him. Let's charge him. Oh, we can get him on perjury or whatever. And they're going to try to rush this thing, probably fuck it up. Comey's probably not going to get convicted. But this is how Donald Trump treats everybody that's of no value to him. He will burn every member of this administration down uh, just because if he thinks it's beneficial to him. He has loyalty to nobody except Donald Trump.
Well, first he's got to get an indictment from a grand jury, and he's been having some problems with that of late. You know, they keep saying that you can get a ham sandwich indicted from a grand jury, but had a little problem with Letitia James. He's had problems with a prosecutor even going after Letitia James again for mortgage fraud. He said there's nothing here, so Donald Trump fires him and is going to get some other fucking clown in there to prosecute her, but they still have to go to court. And if they've got no proof of it, all they do is end up looking stupid. That's why I believe it's the only intent of this is try to scare them and to get them to fold and do whatever he wants, and he can claim victory. But the more and more people that ride this out into court and he keeps losing, it just makes him look stupid. James Comey, for example, I mean, let's be honest. James Comey may be largely responsible for Donald Trump winning the presidency in the first term. He's the one that agreed at the last minute to re-up an investigation on Hillary's emails, which she took a big hit on, which he shouldn't have done according to FBI rules. Honestly, I don't care what happens to James Comey. If he gets fried, good. I don't care. If he gets off, I don't care. He's old news, but Donald Trump has to reach back in the past to prove himself right, and he keeps proving himself wrong.
Exactly. He has to look like the victor. He has to look like the best, the smartest, the brightest, whatever. And he repeatedly fails because he's not. He's
Yeah.
not some super genius. He is not uh the best of the best, what have you. Donald Trump is a guy who fails more times than not. And the only reason we didn't see it during his first term is up until COVID, for the most part, Donald Trump left everything alone. He
Yeah.
let things kind of run and do their thing because things were going good. And he had semi qualified people in his ear saying, hey, if you leave things alone, things are going good. You're going to get the credit. People are going to think you're smart and you're going to make yourself a lot of money doing this. Just don't. Then he burned them all down between COVID and January 6th, and he couldn't get qualified people this time around. He gets dipshits, and he's got nobody smart around him saying, this is a bad idea, Donnie.
Well, and a perfect example of him not being smart is when he took office, Joe Biden had a great stock market. The economy was going well. He had some control over Israel. They were funding Ukraine to fight back against Russia. They were doing all the right things, and things were running pretty smoothly. Had Donald Trump really given a shit about his legacy, um, he would have just left it alone, kind of eased in slowly, trying to do little things here and there. I mean, even the Republicans told him, "Let's not do the big beautiful bill. Let's do it pieces at a time so we don't take the big hit." Sure, they got it passed, but they're going to have to live and die by that on 2026, and it's not going to bode well for them when they get there. Donald Trump is like a bull in a china shop, and the Republicans just bend and scrape to him and follow him over the fucking cliff.
Yep. Up until the point they have where they realize that he is going to cost them the election. And that realization may not hit until after the midterms when they get blown out. I've said it before, there is a greater than zero chance that if they lose the House and the Senate in the midterms, hell, if they even lose ground in the Senate in the midterms and the House, because they probably will lose the House, that they could go, well, we're still here until January 3rd. A lot of us don't have jobs anymore because we got our asses handed to us in that election. Let's set the party up for 2028 and get rid of that motherfucker. And they could pull the trigger and you do something like an impeachment because he has done so many impeachable things and he would be blindsided. He wouldn't see it coming. It's possible. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, I'm having hope that the Republicans would do the right thing. But this is after they got their ass kicked in the election and they're staring at, okay, the trajectory we're on, if we don't do something and change direction, he's going to get our asses kicked again in 28. We got to do something.
Well,
I could see it happening.
theoretically, you could say you would hope the Republicans uh, would do the right thing now. But after that 2026 election, it's not about right or wrong. It's about the only thing you can do to save your fucking soul. So the Republicans aren't going to have to make that distinction. Is this a good move? Is this a bad move? It's the only move that they can make in order to survive. And a lot of these people who will be out of office will have a lot more courage fighting against Donald Trump because in the moment, there's nothing he can do to them while they're not in office, save for some stupid fucking investigation or whatever, which will never pan out. But this is how it goes with narcissists and dumb fucks. They keep pushing until they push too far, and then there's no way to come back and they get buried. That's ultimately what will happen to Donald Trump. I just believed it would happen before the 2026 election. But more and more as I watch it, based on what you're saying too, I'm guessing it's going to take that long for some of these fuckers to understand that this is a bad move. What's strange is you're sitting in Iowa and I'm sitting in Minnesota, and we knew it was a bad move 2 years ago. How the fuck do
Yeah.
they not see it?
Well, because they're riding that high of Donald Trump popularity. He has got that MAGA base, and a chunk of that MAGA base are people who were not interested in politics or who maybe followed politics and had an opinion, but didn't vote prior to Donald Trump. And he brought out a chunk of people to vote in his favor because he came out with that charisma that we talked about earlier and that following from The Apprentice and all of it. He brought people who weren't voting before to vote Republican. And he was able to swing some independents to vote Republican. And they're trying to latch onto it because they were worried and are still worried that without him, that the conservative movement is failing, that more
Yeah.
and more people want the progressive. And one of the things that hurt Kamala Harris is she wasn't progressive enough.
Right. Yeah, I think you're probably right there. That's, we're so far right, we've got to go far left just to try to find some ground at center. Um, yeah, I we are seeing Republicans now pushing back. Like I said, we saw um, Ted Cruz of all people push back regarding this Jimmy Kimmel thing. We're seeing more and more Republicans um, getting angry about what's going on because of what's going on with the farmers and all of all of these things. Uh, the 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 Republican support for Donald Trump is starting to degrade a little bit. I mean, we're seeing that in the polls. The polls are absolutely horrific for Donald Trump, as well they should be. Um, whether that will show up in the election, I'm curious to what you think. I've said this before. I think people aren't voting for politicians anymore. They're voting for brands. They're voting for who they perceive as their personal champions or heroes. I think the electorate is probably less sophisticated now than it was 30 years ago. They're not looking at policies. They can't because Donald Trump has no policies. They're looking for somebody that they like or they feel connected to or they feel will be their champion going forward to take down the government that they think is oppressing them.
Uh, Somewhat, I think. I definitely think for at least the people on the left, party ideology isn't as big of a movement as certain, there's a lot of people that are single issue or just a couple issue voter. Now, when it comes to people on the right, there's a good chunk of them that will vote Republican no matter who,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
But on the left, they're looking for, they got 12 boxes of things they want, and they want somebody to check off a majority or all of them. And they're looking for their issues more than they're looking at, well, our party versus your party. There's a lot of voters that care about, you know, getting all of their issues addressed in the way they want them addressed, instead of looking at the party going, okay, well, if we put Democrats in control, we're not going to be dealing with a fascist leaning Republican Party right now. So that's at least better. And we can improve some things and we can just keep working toward the changes we want. That's one of the big failings of the people on the left.
Well, you're right that the left are a little more sophisticated. They're more concerned about policy and ideology and all that stuff. Let's see what you think about this. I think the Republicans have kind of forced um, Democrats to think more like them, meaning a brand, a hero, or somebody. And the reason I say that is because when we look at situations, I did a live with Trucker T yesterday, and he wanted to bring on some Trumplafucks and see if we can't get some common ground and discuss that. And I looked at him and I go, "And you want me to come on? I'm the wrong motherfucker for that. No, that's not going to work." But we did it, and it was fun. And I love Trucker, and we had a good time. We had one Trumplafuck come on, and I'm afraid I wasn't. I didn't hold back, but there was enough people there that everybody waded in and pounded on this idiot. But
Sorry, I
but
missed it.
yeah, you should have been there. But the point is what we now see. Gavin Newsom's a good example. Gavin Newsom sits down with Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and a few other people, and he's kind of buddy buddy with them. And he took a lot of heat for that. He took a lot of fucking heat for that. And now he's going after Donald Trump, and now they think he's a hero. My contention is this: if you're a Democrat and you're trying to work across the aisle or to be decent with Republicans, you're going to get your ass kicked because these Democrats have gotten their ass kicked for 10 years. If you're not going hard against a Republican, much like Donald Trump did to Democrats, if you're not going hard against a Republican, people are going to get pissed off at you because they're tired of getting beat up and having their lunch taken away from them. They want somebody who's going to fight, and Gavin Newsom is giving that impression, and we're going to need more people to do that. So I think the Democrats have been sucked into what the Republicans do just by virtue of having to do it in order to compete on that level.
Yeah, I think you're right in that regard. Now, as far as whether or not Gavin is going to be the 2028 nominee, who knows?
My
I
guess
think
is
it's
he won't.
probably not. I think he is going to get destroyed in the midterms. And what I mean is, Republicans, well, he looks like he is right now the face of the party. He's the one coming out. He's doing the punching at Donald Trump. He's the big one out there doing all of this. They are going to try to link every Democratic candidate across the board to Gavin Newsom.
Um,
And he's going to take a lot in this election, which is fine. Let him take it, especially maybe this is the plan. Maybe the plan isn't to run Gavin Newsom, um, and let him, and maybe he comes out the other side. Maybe he comes out of it. And if he comes out, you know, looking good after they try to punch at him and punch at him and punch at him, and a lot of the candidates they try to, get to him, win. Maybe he goes out and campaigns with some and they win in districts where you wouldn't think they could. Maybe he does set himself up for 28, but I don't think it's going to. I think Republicans are going to hammer him. And I think there are people sitting back going, I want to wait till after the midterms before I even make remarks that I'm considering 28
right.
because I don't want that smoke.
Well, exactly. And I think, put it this way, if Gavin Newsom gets through, first of all, the election's 3 years away. And what we know about elections, there's always front runners, and they always never end up being the front runners when we get down to the date. But if Gavin Newsom keeps up this pace and punches through the 2026 election, he may be unstoppable at that point. Whether you like him or not, he may be unstoppable at that point. I'm just not sure. I agree with you. I don't know that he can get there. 3 years is a long time. A lot of shit can happen. Bad shit can happen, and things change with with candidates. The question is that we don't know, and it's because, like you said, nobody's going to talk about it really seriously until after the 2026 election. Is there anybody on the Democratic side to pick up the slack from Gavin Newsom and be equally as aggressive and fighting as strongly as Gavin Newsom? Do we have that person?
There's a few. Pritzker, he's
Yeah.
looking like he's putting up a pretty good fight right now. Um, Pete Buttigieg is still do. I still think he's got a chance, mostly because he can go on to Fox News, and he holds his own on Fox. Which,
Right.
while he's not punching up right now and going after Donald Trump and making the big plays, the fact that he can hold his own on Fox is telling. Um, I don't know about Shapiro. I thought maybe he's kind of one of those. I'm
Shapiro is
not sure
almost a
about.
little too Shapiro and Gavin are almost a little too establishment, I think. I could be wrong about that, but it almost needs you almost need somebody like Pritzker out of nowhere that is equal to Donald Trump and then some in terms of power and money and is willing to throw caution to the wind and throw some haymakers. That's kind of what I think we need.
Yeah. Then you got what, Wes Moore in Maryland.
He said he's not
Um,
running now. He said he's not even thinking about running for president. Now I know that can change.
that can change. Again, he's probably trying to avoid the smoke for the midterms. We don't know, but he was pushing back against Donald Trump. He could come out of nowhere, and not Warnock, the other senator
Os-
in
Ossoff.
Ossoff. He's another one that was pushing back. He looked like he might make a potential run for it. And then there's always the one I go back to, and based on recent comments, sounds like she may throw. She didn't say it specifically. Is Kamala Harris when she was on The View? They asked her like, or was it The View or was it with somebody else? But anyway, she was being interviewed,
Rachel
and they asked her
Maddow, I
like,
think.
I think they asked her like three different ways about whether or not she would run for 2028. She never said no.
No.
She like, I'm not considering it right now. It's not on my radar right now. Those kind of answers. She was cagey about it enough that she left the door open. Now, depending on what happens between here and there, could she build her brand up enough and fight and push? Maybe. It's possible. I don't know yet. We'll have to. I mean, we got 3 years to see between here and there.
Well, I think Kamala Harris would have been a great president. I'm still worried about the whole racism and sexism and misogyny in this country. It's far more rampant than we thought, and we really have to win in 2028. A lot of people said the book she wrote threw a lot of people under the bus, and they felt like that would hurt her chances um, in the election in 2028 if she decided to run. I'll just go back to what I said before. 3 years from now, nobody's going to be talking about that book then. She'll be creating her own image if she, in fact, is running for president. But I will say this, for as many people that suggest what she did in that book might hurt her for the election, I disagree. It might help her. She threw Joe Biden under the bus a little bit. She threw the Democratic Party under the bus for not helping. Joe Biden's administration really not helping her, throwing her in the fire with 100 days. Um, People voted for Donald Trump because they didn't like what the Democrats were doing at that point. So to separate herself from that ilk and to create her own narrative, I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that's probably a smart idea in spite of what some other pundits might say.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things she kind of touched on is she said she, I don't remember how it was quoted. She said it was a mistake for Joe Biden to not drop out earlier or whatever, something like that. But she said she was blaming herself for not pushing him to drop out earlier and noticing the so-called decline, to give her more time to run because
Right.
she was just as blindsided by him stepping aside as anybody. Um, and then she had 107 days. She had to do the unprecedented and try to put up a campaign, and she put up a hell of a fight. Now, some people will say there are issues with this campaign and that they believe it is 100% rigged. If these court cases prove there was some phony and fishy stuff, I'll entertain it. Until I see some actual proof, I don't know. And even if these cases prove it, there's nothing they can do besides fix the issues for next time so this doesn't happen again.
Right. It's not like they're going to come up with some findings and then they're going to say, oh, we made a mistake. Donald Trump's out and Kamala's in. That's not going to happen. It'll only affect the next election. So I don't know why people are even worried about this shit. Um, I wish Kamala could run again, and I hope she can win. My problem is whoever we run, it is absolutely essential that they win. I mean, if you think we're looking at the demise of democracy, if somebody like Donald Trump and MAGA and Project 2025 win again, it's pretty much fucking over. I mean, some people might even think it's over already. I don't. But if we fuck up again in 2028, I don't know how you come back from that.
The thing is, I think we're going to have a lot more latitude to run in 28 because things are going to only be worse than they are now. Donald
Right.
Trump, even he's going to continue, they're going to be about the same or worse because he's going to continue to fuck up. Now, miracle of miracles could happen for the Republicans, and Donald Trump could have that choke on a Big Mac moment any day, and they could have 3 years to project JD Vance and rehabilitate their image. But I don't see JD Vance winning a general against any Democrat. I
No.
don't see DeSantis winning a general against any Democrat. And if the other names that we've heard that might throw their name in the hat is Don Jr. and Eric Trump, not a chance.
No.
I don't think there's any serious Republican that is going to run in 28. They're not going to want the fallout of this administration. Now, that being said, it could be the reverse of what happened with Bill Clinton because they could fall ass backwards into it. Clinton wasn't supposed to win. The economy took a shit, and Clinton beats George H.W. Bush. Nobody expected it. And maybe that happens with the Republicans because something happens to Donald Trump. JD Vance figures it out in 6 months, makes the economy at least better. And maybe he somehow walks into a term where people are like, well, maybe we'll give him a full term, see what he can really do. That might be best case scenario for Donald Trump or for the Republicans. Um, but we might have some latitude to run somebody you wouldn't think could run. Maybe you could run a Kamala Harris Pete Buttigieg ticket and somehow pull out a victory. I don't know. If things are horrible, it might not matter.
Well, it may not matter. I mean, that's kind of what happened in 2020. We had Biden and Kamala Harris. That wouldn't have been the top shelf opposition for the Democrats. Biden had his Obama years, which helped him. But of course, because we had a black woman as vice president, that could have held her back or held that campaign back, and it didn't. They've got the most votes of any presidential candidate in history. The problem with Kamala's problem was she was fighting against the Republicans and some of the Democrats. She had to fight
Mm-hmm.
against both sides, and it was insurmountable. It's one thing to try to get the, fight against the Republicans, but you need all the Democrats on your side, and clearly, there was a large number of Democrats that either didn't vote for her. Well, they didn't vote for her. They didn't vote for anybody. Because as I've said before, if you look at the 2020 election, Donald Trump didn't get that many more votes than he did in 2020, in 2024. Kamala got quite a lot different number of votes, a lower number of votes than Joe Biden got. So that tells me Democrats didn't step up and vote. So she was fighting against Democrats as well as the Republicans.
She was, and part of that was, as she pointed, as from just some of the excerpts I've seen in her book. I have not bought it yet. I might at some point. Um, she said she couldn't break away from Joe Biden. She wasn't allowed to criticize Joe Biden. She wasn't allowed to do anything against Joe Biden. So she was stuck with his policies, which so there were Democrats that didn't like what he was doing, even though he was doing the best he could with a Republican controlled House the last 2 years.
All right.
And uh, she was hamstrung a little bit because she couldn't get far enough distance away from Joe Biden to make things different. But now she would have that buffer zone of this administration in between where they're not going to be looking at what Joe Biden did. They're going to go, oh, fuck, this is what the Republicans just did. It's going to be an entirely different window. She could potentially run and win. But as we keep saying, it's 3 years from now. We don't know who it could be. I mean, there's a lot of things that can change. And in between, we may have candidates that we didn't think of. And not that he may want to run, but Rob Sand is running for governor here in Iowa. He is the only statewide elected Democrat currently in Iowa, period.
Yeah.
He's a state auditor. He's running for governor. Now, if he wins massively, maybe he throws his name in the hat and says, hey, I'm going to run. Who knows? We could see that. Anything could happen between here and 28. So uh, it's just way too early to tell.
And that's exactly right. When we have this 2026 election The midterms, we're going to have new people coming in, and every time there's new people coming in, just like every NFL season or MLB season, there are there are stars that emerge, and that's why I've said the next candidate is more likely to emerge. And when I say emerge, I'll give you an example. Jasmine Crockett, she emerged to
Hmm.
be a leader when she's only been in there what, a couple of years.
I think she's on her second or third term, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm going to check that out because I know she's relatively new. Even if she's on her second term, she's still pretty new. But she stepped up and stepped out, um, and she's not going to be a candidate for president because she's too young at this point. But uh, we don't know what's going to happen. That 2026 election, most people ignore the midterms, but this is going to be a big one, and I think we're going to have a big turnout for this. But I think more importantly, when it comes to a presidential candidate, before they worry about who the candidate's going to be, the Democrats got to shore up their own fucking party, get them
Yeah,
unified in some way. Because as much as the Republican Party is divided, so is the Democratic Party. And that was proven on November 5th.
yeah. And I think the midterm election, if it's as big as we think it could be a unifying moment for the Democrats if they take seats, especially things they didn't expect. I'll give you an example of what I'm thinking here. I've been saying for a while, I think Iowa is in play. Now, we have Kim Reynolds, very unpopular governor, not running for
Right.
reelection. Rob Sand is running for governor. Like I said, he was the only statewide elected Democrat. He won the last time Kim Reynolds won
Right.
on the same ballot. Um, you have Joni Ernst not running for reelection here in Iowa, open seat, maybe a Senate pickup for the Democrats. And I found out just the other day, I did a TikTok on this. Iowa districts 2 and 4 are not going to have incumbents running for reelection in the
Wow.
House. And Iowa 1 and 3 are always competitive for the Democrats. Now, I don't think District 4 will have a chance of going blue. It's been Republican red since it was District 5 when we had five members of the House in the 80s and early 90s before we got hit with redistricting. And that used to be represented by Steve King, that racist motherfucker. But
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll go, but we could have 3 or 4 House seats flip blue in Iowa potentially, and the governor and a senator.
Well, and the situation, you're a big farming state, and farmers are having trouble all around the country, certainly in Iowa too. You don't think that would persuade Republicans to vote Democrat as they're losing their farms and losing their asses?
Probably the only way it would that Republicans could salvage it, in my opinion, with the farmers, and it's because it goddamn works, and it kind of worked during COVID, is stimulus checks. If they
Yeah.
pass some kind of a big farm relief bill to bail the farmers out from the bullshit they caused, and they're basically made whole, they may go, okay, no harm, no foul. I got to keep my farm. The government stepped in and saved us. Sure, it's their policies that fucked us over, but they realized it and they stepped in and they made things better for me. That might be enough to keep their vote.
It's a little, the one difference though with that is that the Democrats are taking a different tact when it comes to the farmers and getting bailed out. There's a couple of things to consider. First of all, there's nothing in it for Donald Trump, so he has no need to push for a bailout. But when they bailed out the farmers last time, people were saying, well, that's good. They bailed out the farmers. Democrats aren't doing that anymore. They're pissed. They're going, oh, you're getting welfare. You're socialist and stuff. And they're getting a little angry that the Democrats are fucking needling them a little bit. It's not going to be as popular. They're not going to get through it without getting beat up a little bit.
Well, yeah, that is true. That's a little different, but I still think if they get some kind of government bailout, that might be enough, especially if it's right around the election where the money hits, that it might affect their reason to vote, because they can say, well, see, the Republicans, they put the money in my wallet. Doesn't matter that they fucked me over and took it in the first place.
Yeah, clearly
They
that
put the
doesn't
money
matter.
back. But if they don't get made whole before the election, they have nobody but to blame but Republicans, and it could flip a lot of farm areas to go, wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, and the other aspect is too that I don't know how true. Well, I know it's true, but how much it plays a factor. Um, it's believed by a lot of people that Republicans want to do this so they lose their farms and big corporate entities can buy up those farms. So if that's their intent, there would be no motivation for a fucking bailout.
Yeah, you're right. And I've been hearing that a lot from a lot of creators that are saying, well, they're trying to just buy up cheap farmland, get these farmers desperate, they'll sell at any price. And again, with this administration, these Republicans, you got to just go, could be, it's possible. There's so
Well,
much wacky shit going on that you got
it's
to
not even
question it.
it's not even a conspiracy theory because that is already going on. It's been going on for several years where corporate entities were buying up family farms. There's far fewer family farms now than there was 10 or 20 years ago. So it is happening. This would be a way for them to speed up the process.
Yep. Uh, and the ones that are farming, it's just the equipment's too expensive. They can't, you know, they have to have a big enough farm to justify the price of the equipment and all of that. And a lot of times, what these places do is they sell every place, when they do sell the farm, they sell the land except for the place the farmhouse is sitting on. They keep the acreage, then these corporations lease the land back to the farmer. Well, here, go, plant on the property you just sold us, and we'll give you a cut, and we'll take all the risk. And they go, yeah, okay, and they make it work.
So
I don't
what
know.
you're saying is you take these people who are farmers in business for themselves and doing business, trying to make a living and get by. They come over and fuck them over and said, "Hey, but don't worry, we're going to make you sharecroppers." I bet they're
Kind
going to
of.
love the fuck out of that.
I mean, you hear about it though, that's what happens in some cases is that they do end up working the land they just sold for a cut, and it's not nearly as lucrative as it was, but well, they get backed into a corner, and what are they going to do?
Yeah. Well, we're getting down toward the end, and this is a perfect time to talk about the imminent problem, the impending doom, and that is September 30th, which is the day where we could have the government shut down. Um, and it's not going well as far as the negotiations. I've always said in previous shutdowns that they'll fuck around till the last minute of the last day and they'll figure it out and they'll keep the country open. I'm not so sure about that at this point because the Democrats seem, at least they seem fairly strong about what they want, and all they really want is more less Medicaid cuts and more money for ACA, which I think the vast majority of people in this country want, Republican and Democrat, and they just don't want to give on that. Donald Trump was going to meet with the Democrat leaders, and then he canceled that because he doesn't he doesn't have the courage to talk to them. Um, and he even said, "Don't negotiate with the Democrats." Well, unfortunately, you can't get this passed through the Senate without some help from the Democrats. They have the majority, but you're going to need the 60 votes in the Senate. So they're going to need help from the Democrats. Donald Trump is doing nothing to set this up to get some deal cut. He wants what he wants, and if he doesn't get it, he's just going to throw caution to the wind. And maybe he does want the country shut down, but it looks more and more like that's a distinct possibility.
Well, couple things with this potential shutdown. One, yeah, Donald Trump wants what he wants, and he is saying don't negotiate with the Democrats, do it all without them, etc. But he also wants to try to blame the Democrats if it does get shut down. He doesn't realize by saying what he's saying, and not don't negotiate, he thinks that, well, if they don't get what they want and they, and the government does shut down, that he can blame the Democrats. No, you've said don't work with them, don't negotiate, do it yourself. This shutdown will fall on Donald Trump, and this wouldn't even be the first government shutdown under his watch.
No,
He had one
definitely
during
not.
his first term.
And the Democrats have to consider this. Do we get blamed for the shutdown? Well, you shouldn't. They have the majority in the House and the Senate. They should be able to get this thing passed, negotiate it out, and get some Democrats to vote in the Senate. They should be able to do that. If they're if the Republicans think that the Democrats are going to get blamed for the shutdown, they aren't thinking ahead, because it's my contention that the Democrats will get blamed more for giving in to the Republicans and giving them what they want than they would for the shutdown.
I think the blame for the shutdown in the moment won't matter as much as who's going to take the blame after. And
Yeah,
what I mean by that is, okay, September 30th comes around, they don't have a deal, government shuts down. Let's say it goes 2 weeks, and they come to an agreement, which is just basically what the Republicans want now: fund everything at current levels, including Donald Trump's cuts, and nothing the Democrats want gets added in. No ACA credits, no uh, Medicaid increases, none of that. They're going to get the blame for the shutdown.
right.
If those 2 weeks go by and they come out of it with permanently extending the ACA credits, and they get, Medicaid and Medicare funding put back and some other concessions, Republicans are going to get blamed for the shutdown because Democrats come out winning.
Right. Well, don't you think Donald Trump is just doing what Donald Trump does all the time? He's playing chicken with the Democrats. He thinks he can intimidate them. But what I'm saying is, if the Democrats, if Chuck Schumer comes out and does what he did last time, the Democrats at this stage are going to take a beating from the public, from the Democratic people, for giving in to Donald Trump once again. Because Schumer got decimated when he did it last time. Well, I'm worried about what it's going to do to everybody with the shutdown. All I have to say right now is shutdown. What about all the other shit? Because you capitulated to him, we've got all this other shit going on now. Um, you tried it once, you failed. There's no reason to give an inch on these motherfuckers. Let him play his game of chicken. Let him get his ass beat.
The only way Chuck Schumer and the Democrats come out of this with funding the government and there not being a shutdown and they don't take a beating is if they get their demands met. They get the credits, they get the other funding they want restored with language in there saying that it can't be cut for X number of years or whatever, basically pushing it out past the end of Donald Trump's term so he can't come by next year and just recut it again anyway.
But that's the problem. They're trying to play the game they always play, and I'm hoping the Democrats don't buy into it. Mike Johnson is saying, "Let's just get this done. Let's keep the country open. We don't want to do that to people, and we'll talk about the ACA next time around, or we'll talk about Medicaid next time around, because that next time will never come. It never comes when they do that shit. It's
Mm-hmm.
always like Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown, and the Democrats keep falling on their ass. So hopefully you're right. They stay strong and they fight to the end. And if they shut down, what the fuck? How could it get much worse than it is now? What's it going to hurt if it shuts? I mean, I know it's going to hurt people, but capitulating to them is going to hurt even more people.
You're 100% right. And I want to touch on something. I did look into it. I've had some people in my comments asking about what would happen to the Epstein files and the Epstein investigation. Will that continue if the government shuts down? Congress is exempt from a funding cut during a shutdown. They can carry on any business they want to carry on
Right.
during a shutdown. Now, primarily, they are going to be focused on trying to come to a deal and the get the government back open. But if they want to still hold hearings and things about the Epstein files while the government is closed, they can. Now, whether they can get new information out of the DOJ, I'm not 100% sure about like whether the subpoenas would get answered or stuff, but they could still call people in to testify and that kind of thing before Congress. And Donald Trump isn't going to get away from the Epstein files just because the government shut down.
Well, I was talking about Donald Trump and his intimidation, and he's trying to pressure people. This just came out on CNN. This is what, Wednesday night. This is breaking news, which I hate that term because everything's fucking breaking news these days. But it basically says that the White House Budget Office tells federal agencies to prepare plans for mass firings if the government shuts down. So he's trying to tell the Democrats, well, if you shut it down, I'm going to mass fire everybody. You know what? You got to still stand strong. You still got to do it.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, he's going to try to mass fire him. Then these people are going to form a class action. They're going to go to court and kick his ass again and get back pay for the time they weren't working. So good luck with that, Donnie.
Yeah, I mean this is how Donald Trump does everything. Well, if you do that, I'm going to do this. And he always fails when he does it, but it's so ingrained in his personality, and he's done it since he was a child. This is how he reacts to stuff. James Comey said something I didn't like, so I'm going to try to indict him on some bullshit. Or Letitia James, he goes to her and says that we're going to get you for mortgage fraud. That mortgage fraud thing seems to be his deal. So he must have committed all kinds of mortgage fraud because every confession is a projection. Um, he has a prosecutor that can't do it because there is no evidence of any crimes, and so he fires him. Who's going to get some other clown to do it. This is how Donald Trump behaves. This is how he does business. It's trying to intimidate people. The whole thing of going to court or lawsuits isn't for the intent to actually go through court. It's to get people to say, oh my God, I'm so afraid of Donald Trump. I'll just give him what he wants and we'll be okay. Well, there's a lot of people like James Comey who has a little money and has the right story on his side. He's not going to back off of Donald Trump. He's finding out very quickly that his normal strategy is not working with everybody, and he's getting his ass kicked in the process.
Yeah, exactly. He's trying to push him around, and day by day, they're realizing how weak he really is. He
Yeah,
looks frail. He has the memory lapses. He has all the health issues, and every day they're closer to his political capital being gone.
yeah,
And the more and more he screws the economy over, the more Democrats are like, yeah, we have no reason to work with you. We have no reason to be afraid of you. You know, we're going to just do what we do and, fuck you. You know, that's
yeah.
the end of that. He is going to end up ultimately being very, very weak. Um, and the other side of it is when he does take these cases to court, he loses because he takes in bad arguments. He can't get good attorneys who could argue the same thing. Look at that. We talked about the not Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the 15 billion that got tossed.
Yeah,
One of the reasons the judge tossed it was because the complaint was 86 pages long that read like an 86-page long Donald Trump Truth Social post.
right.
It didn't read like a legal document because he's not letting the lawyers do their thing. And it sounded like Donald Trump was dictating it to him, in parts of it at least. So he constantly loses because he's not doing things smart anymore because he doesn't have the brain power to realize he's failing, in part because of the cognitive decline that he's going through.
Cognitive decline, and as normal course, he doesn't think, he reacts. And when he reacts,
That
he
too.
makes the wrong choices. I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I appreciate it, Eric. Why don't you tell folks where they can find you? Because oddly enough, we're still being able to be found on TikTok for some reason.
Well, I can kind of be found on TikTok. I don't know what's going on, but none of my videos are getting views anymore. One I
Really?
posted at three something this afternoon, when I checked it right before we got on this podcast, was sitting at 16 views. But I've got no
Wow.
warnings. I got no guideline violations. It's not flagged anywhere that I can see. It's just stuck.
Okay.
And so I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it'll get kicked out at some point and it'll start rocking. But you can find me on TikTok. I am Analytical Iowan over on TikTok. You can find me on YouTube. Everything I post on TikTok does get put up on YouTube. I'm also back posting on Blue Sky much more regular than I was before. Same
Yeah, me
thing.
too.
I put on TikTok goes up on Blue Sky. And I've added something.
Really?
You can now find my TikToks audio only on Spotify.
Nice. Nice. A lot of people
Now
are listening to this show on Spotify right now.
those go up a little later. I usually wait till I am definitely done for the day posting TikToks before I even attempt to post anything to Spotify. But everything does get put up on Spotify right now. I've been doing it for a little bit. It's going pretty good over there as far as me getting stuff out. Still trying to find a way to streamline it, make it easier on myself. But so far, I'm liking putting stuff up there. So those are the places you can find me. There is a link tree in my bio on both YouTube, TikTok, and Blue Sky. I don't think I have one yet on Spotify. But if you find me on one, it will take you to everywhere else that I have my content.
You're on Substack too, right?
I am, but I'm not really posting.
Okay.
I got to get better about posting on Substack. Um, and a lot of it is just having the time to sit down every day and get my content up there consistently.
Yeah, and it's a little more time consuming to post on Substack, but I'm on there every day. Will is on there now, which is good, but he's also got his fourth account on TikTok. That poor bastard gets kicked off every time. It's unbelievable. And like you said, my views are going okay. Maybe not as good as they did way back when, but they're still pretty good. And I don't have any violations. I have no videos taken down, and I haven't changed a thing. So I don't know what's going on with that, why that's the case. But I'm not going to look to give horse in the mouth and ask questions. I'm just going to keep doing what I can as long as I can.
That's pretty much what I'm doing. As long as I can keep making them on TikTok, I will start there. And if it goes away, I'll keep making my videos and they'll just go live for the first time over on YouTube and I'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, for those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.